Welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Howard Drukarsh. And for those who don't know me, I've been a successful realtor in Canada's largest market for over 30 years. And in the latter part of my career, I co-founded Right at Home Realty, Canada's largest independent brokerage, with a roster of over 5,500 agents. In 2020, I retired to start this podcast, and it's been a wonderful opportunity to interview people in real estate and related industries to find out about their journey, challenges, and to get their insight on the real estate business. Today, my guest is one of those people, Andrew Bowerbank. Andrew is, and I want to make sure I get it right, is the Vice President of Market Development at the Canadian Wood Council. Andrew, welcome to the podcast.
Nice to be here, Howard, and good to see your face again. It's been a while.
It has. So normally I go into a very straight introduction, but this is different. This is Andrew Bowerbank. So here we go. And Andrew, you get to rebut once I finish. I've known Andrew for over 20 years. I met him when I started karate in my 50s. He is a remarkable student of martial arts, black belt in many disciplines. My family thanks you for not killing me, and I certainly do. I was able to survive your training. He's also an incredible artist in terms of wood. He's been a teacher at Humber. He's a very smart and focused on the best things in life, focused on the climate, ecology. He has a lovely wife who's a teacher, two daughters who, the last time I saw them, they are still twins, of course. They were twins. He dropped off at our house and screamed. Well, he was out and screamed in our house. So I'll always remember that. So Andrew, welcome to the podcast. Why don't you go ahead and tell the viewers a bit about your background in business and what you do at the Canadian Wood Council?
Yeah, thanks, Howard. As I mentioned, it's a pleasure to be here and to see you again, and brings back a lot of memories, right? It's amazing how life changes. For me, growing up since I was 8 years old, I've been immersed in traditional Japanese martial arts, and been very fortunate, as you were as well, to learn from one of the great masters in the country, Masami Tsuruoka, who passed away a number of years ago. But he was actually recognized as the father of Canadian karate, received the Order of Ontario. He sent me to Japan when I was 18, and that was an eye-opening experience because it was a year of bare-knuckle fighting, something that people in today's society just can't fathom. But it's a discipline that is carried through, and obviously life changes, and you get two wonderful daughters heading to university in September, and your focus changes. But that memory and that experience and what we did over those years, just really helped to define the rest of my life. And I think it's the discipline of all of that has allowed my career to flourish the way it has. Combining that with something my father taught me, and his career was very much, he was very much a strategist and a visionary when it came to following trends in the marketplace. He followed the entertainment industry, mostly on the technology side, but through audio and video, and he was involved in the introduction of VHS and beta tapes, and then over to DVD, and now everything's streamed. But when he was alive, he was the head of 20th Century Fox Film in Canada, and also with the Ryan Pictures and MGM, United Artists, and made quite a name for himself. And he's, I just watched him watch these trends from technology change and shift, and he would move with that. And so what I had done, back from when you first met me, and I was into a lot of, wood design work, industrial designer by trade. That's my background. So I focused a lot in wood products and custom furniture and things like that. But then I got really fortunate because I have a very strong personal interest in the environment, natural environment. And at the time, boy, I'm going to go back to probably about 98. That's quite a while ago. I had an opportunity come my way where the opportunity to combine my design, my love for design with love for the environment came together. And the Toronto Region Conservation Authority, under the CEO at that time, Brian Denny, saw a value in trying to create a relationship between the property developers that were trying to get the land in and around the GTA and find a place to talk around how development and natural environment can coexist. And what came out of all that was this new movement at the time around green buildings and energy efficiency. And now people listening to this podcast will know what a green building is and likely even LEED certification and stuff like that. But back then, no one even knew what that was. So it was my job to really try to connect with the developers and demonstrate a different way of designing and building facilities and buildings and even communities that were more sensitive to the natural environments. And that really set a whole new path for my career, and very much outward, outspoken person. I love marketing and development and strategic planning and business development. And being able to work on some of the very first green building projects in the country was an amazing experience. I did the first LEED Platinum building in Ontario, and then a number of other great projects with various municipalities and master plans. But then I came into an opportunity where I was on the board of directors for the Canada Green Building Council, and actually became the first executive director of the Toronto chapter. So again, very early stages when it comes to developing new ideas and markets and new building technologies. So that was fun to kind of figure out how to introduce something new to the market. And then from there, I was basically invited to be the first CEO for the World Green Building Council. Now, you can imagine an association around green buildings would be very influential. But for listeners who don't know the World Green Building Council, we grew that from 8 member nations when we started to over 60 countries with green buildings within 4 years. And I had a seat at the United Nations Environmental Program. So the ability to go from local domestic efforts in business and then start playing on the international stage, having breakfast with Al Gore and things like that is something you're never going to forget. And even working with the leaders at the UN and seeing what they have to go through for international diplomacy is amazing. So I did that for about 5 years, and then I come back to Canada and started advising a number of big companies like Magna and Enbridge and a few of the utilities around the Greater Toronto Area on green strategies and business protocols that we could use to shift practices towards a greener future. And there's money to be made in that. And people started seeing the value not only of being first to market, but also what the return on investment was. And that allowed me to sort of create a business plan that has stuck with me today. And I spent quite a few years at EllisDon and WSP. And for those of you who might know, WSP is the second largest engineering firm in the world, and out of Montreal, and all around the sustainability efforts that they do. And then just recently, about 8 months ago, came on to the Canadian Wood Council. I've been having fun ever since developing a new strategy for them.
And Andrew, because we have been friends for so long, as I watched your career, I did see how you just made steps that followed your passion, which was the environment, and you found high level opportunities to be involved. And I really admire how you built your career, and and it's just nice to have a friend and watch them grow. So thank you, and I know how busy you are, so thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, my pleasure.
I have some questions. I did tell some people you're coming here, so some people emailed me questions. Let's start with kind of a very basic one: is the future of wood in residential building? Let's say we could say Toronto, Ontario, Canada. I'm sure you're familiar with all those areas. So how do you answer that question?
Well, I talked earlier, about my career and how I follow trends. Same things happening now in wood product applications for buildings as a whole. In the residential market, what we're seeing is a shift to multi-unit residential buildings and larger residential buildings, multi-unit, that are using what's called mass timber. So these are systems, you might be familiar with things like your 2x4 structural light frame systems that it's called. It's been with us for decades and decades. But now this idea of mass timber is really taking, as it sounds, a bulk mass of wood and building structural beams and columns with these. They're not just the traditional old post and beam structure that you would have seen back or even in cottages today. These are engineered systems of laminated material together to create extremely strong and long-lasting product that is, it's almost like, for example, we have what's called a cross-laminated timber system, a CLT. And if you can imagine a sheet of plywood on steroids, very thick, very large, but then you also have glue lam systems, which is like your joists in large systems. That's actually used in, for example, aquatic centers to span large spaces. The glue lam systems can even span further than steel structures. So the new wave around mass timber in residential buildings is starting to get a real foothold right now. And we're actually about to publish a report on a mid-rise guide for mass timber applications and wood products. So I think the future and the change towards mass timber in residential is going to be amazing. We're not going to lose the standard light frame, but we're going to add to it. And mass timber is going to be amazing for larger scale structural buildings.
For our audience to hear from someone like you right in the midst of the leading edge, I think it's great. It's just great information. So again, I'm really glad you made time for this. How much use is there in Toronto, or if you want to go past Toronto, in Canada right now, in a percentage way of wood being employed in the use of buildings?
It's picking up dramatically. There are obviously obstacles and barriers right now with the pandemic situation we're in right now. There's a concern we have around pricing and supply, but these are all short-term things that we'll talk about in a bit, I'm sure. But what we're seeing now is, if you go down, for example, in Toronto and some of the older buildings on Queen Street, King Street, and you go in to see some of the structures of these are all large post buildings made of wood, and they're solid, out of a tree. Whereas these new systems I'm talking about, these engineered systems, emulate that to some degree, but with a much stronger product for longer term reliability. I mean, even just yesterday, we did a massive fire test in British Columbia to prove the mass timber products do not burn. The nature of the way fire works with wood is it searches for oxygen. And light frame, as we've probably seen in the news lately, in the middle of construction, unless you're really careful, you could lose an entire job site to fire. But a mass timber building, it's so dense, it acts like a tree. When a tree burns, it chars on the outside, creates a barrier, and then basically the core still stays solid and strong. So for remediation purposes, for safety and security, getting people out of buildings, these new structures, these new engineering systems are really performing exceptionally well. Concrete under extreme heat pops, steel warps, but mass timber exhausts oxygen and depletes that. So it's quite an amazing story around that people just don't know about. And we're seeing a lot of the developers learning this, understanding that, starting to create systems with wood products like these. And not only is it structurally sound, but if you leave these beams exposed, they're beautiful. And there's something about the indoor environmental quality, especially in an urban center, where people feel better by being near natural products and natural materials. And we're seeing that now in hospitals and healthcare sectors, and where they're leaving large beams exposed because it gives that feeling of calmness to people. It's called biophilic design, actually. And it's a field that is becoming very popular right now in the design community. And wood buildings are playing an integral part of that.
And in terms of, and you did, I guess, introduce this idea of change. Since you started your interest in wood, and following how people and companies deal with it, what's been the influence of technology on the development of wood being more acceptable in building?
Yeah, I think the technology factor is key. As I mentioned, the idea of an older style post and beam house, for example, or cottage is good for aesthetics, but the structural integrity of these new technologies, the way they're creating these engineered wood systems, is just phenomenal. And just going to some of the manufacturing centers that I've been to before the pandemic, it's rivaling the sophistication of automotive manufacturing. So the way you laminate the different wood pieces together, the way they're using CNC machines to cut out the different parts, the way they're using BIM technology for architectural engineering drawings and making sure everything lines up perfectly. It's also very good to use for prefab modular systems and making sure that we can build these large systems in a factory, ship it to site, and you're saving money on the manufacturing costs, the installation costs, and the shipping costs as well. So all around, from a technology, but also a systems integrated process, is really taking things to the next level.
There was an article I emailed you about a building, a wood constructed building, and you said, that was my project. I can't remember what that was. Do you want to talk about that one?
Not sure, no.
Oh, okay. Then we won't. Remember, I sent you an email and I said, there's a building somewhere in the city that was all wood.
Okay, well, I mean, there's even if you say that, Howard, there's a bunch out there right now.
Maybe,
so there's, and even some of the ones that are under design right now, like George Brown College has an amazing all wood building. Humber College has one coming up. There's so many. Even right now, Waterfront Toronto is really pushing mass timber for all of their buildings. If you go out to BC, the Brock Commons residential building at UBC is 18 stories tall and solid wood. Places in Europe, the buildings are hitting 30 stories. So it's really design that's restricting it, not the material. It's amazing what's happening.
I'm pretty sure it was the Humber College one that I sent you.
Oh yeah,
I remember that one. Yeah. So, and for me, I'm in real estate, and it was an eye opener that this, like, it's not widely known yet, right? I mean, one of the challenges, certainly the manufacturers, developers, people that look to cost, benefit, all the things that you have to look at when you're developing something. They've already undertaken. There's some benefits here. I mean, the fact universities have gone ahead and done it's a really good start. And developers, they'll look at, if the public wants it, they'll find a way to, include it into projects and to, to answer kind of answer what the public wants. And it's just fascinating because it's so underappreciated. I guess that's the word I'm looking for. I think most people don't recognize what's going on in the wood building industry.
Yeah, I mean, but again, if we kind of reflect on what we've talked about already with the trends and then also around green buildings, we could say the same thing about green buildings 10 years ago, right? People they weren't aware of it. And, now not only the real estate community understands it, but even buyers are asking for certain elements of green components within homes, within buildings and office space. So the market's educated on green buildings. And I really think within the next 5 years, that same level of awareness and understanding around mass timber and the use of wood products within commercial, institutional, multi-residential buildings, it's going to make a big difference. And one of the game changers is, it's ease and light material compared to steel and concrete, and its assembly on site. It really reduces the construction process dramatically compared to standard steel and concrete buildings. The other benefit, if you're looking at from a climate change perspective, this takes a little bit more to get your head around a little bit, but the idea of embodied carbon or embodied energy, where materials that are naturally grown actually sequester carbon within the fibers of what they are. And wood is very much one of the top leaders or top materials of that. So as it grows, as you know, plants suck in and breathe in carbon. It stays embedded within the fiber. And what we do is by harvesting a tree at a certain age, that carbon then stays locked into that material. So by putting that into the buildings we're using, it actually becomes a carbon reduction or even a carbon neutral story for using that kind of product, whereas steel and concrete are very carbon intensive to produce. So the climate change story is good. The fact that wood is the only renewable material in the construction sector, the only one. The fact that it has biophilic properties and health is amazing for human health. And then you have the manufacturing part of it. So there's so many benefits that are going to tip this trend to mainstream before we even realize it.
One of the companies I became familiar with is Delos. And I'm sure you are.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think our mutual friend Paul Galini
Yeah.
That's how I found out about it. And I've been watching them on social media. Why don't you talk about, because they are kind of in the area you're talking about. They're focused on healthy buildings, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I've known Paul for a very long time. I consider him a good friend. It's been a while since him and I connected, but Paul has had a very good success in his career, and he's probably one of the champions in the green building movement in Ontario. And I think he's very closely tied to the Home Builders Association to build. He's had a long, successful story in Empire Communities, and the work that he's doing now, he carries that with him in everything he does. And really, that's an example of the type of champion you need at a given company to move this forward, right? So there's a number of others that we can name like that for sure. But, it's that kind of value and that kind of leadership in the marketplace that's going to bring the technology to the development of the community and the awareness to the client as well. So we're going to get the benefit from all that. So people like Paul and others, it's crucial that they keep doing what they're doing because I think, the type of product that we're going to end up developing and delivering to the marketplace is going to be far superior and is really going to make an impact in the real estate community, I think.
That's great. And it's interesting what a small world. I mean, you and I both know Paul. I met him. We were together on, it was called the Chairs Council at Habitat for Humanity, and he was a member of that. And Chris Chopik, we both know.
Chris is a good guy. Yeah,
small
world sometimes.
It is a small world. Okay, so here's some of the questions that were emailed in. I actually have 4. Wood has always been a popular building material, but prices have seemingly skyrocketed due to the effects of COVID on the workforce manufacturing lumber. What effect is this having on the industry as a whole? And second part, is there any consensus as to when these prices might adjust?
Yeah, it's having quite an impact, and it really is a supply chain. We have some amazing manufacturers in this country, right across the country, actually, of all types of wood products, whether it's light frame systems, joists, 2x4s, all that stuff, right up to the big mass timber stuff we were talking about. We are well recognized globally as producers of these products, but there's a ceiling on how much you can produce. And the problem is simple little things like the pandemic hits and everybody's at home doing renovations and they all want to buy a plywood sheet or a 2x4. And that puts a big strain on a production line that's not used to or not ready for this big influx of purchasing. So things slow down, and then you have problems and issues always across borders with softwood lumber. It's almost like the perfect storm of issues that have come up right now. But I want to give everybody confidence that the right people are working on this right now. It is a blip in the market as producers start to catch up and prepare for the next generation of product delivery. And I think there's also a strong interest in the international opportunities for Canadian wood products. So all these things together, every industry is seeing challenges right now because of the pandemic. Steel prices are up as well. Yes, wood is up dramatically, but don't forget wood is also used for paper, and it's used for furniture and flooring and so many different things. So the demand on the product is far and wide beyond just real estate. So it's a matter of just waiting for the market to balance a little bit with everything that's going on. But all the right players within the wood product sector is laser focused on this and getting ready to make those right adjustments fairly soon. I think so.
Are you leaving?
Nope. I'm just adjusting my chair.
I told producer Adam this is going to be the most fun because it's like interviewing someone who used to beat me up.
Well, as soon as you start doing the little digs, I'm going to start putting them back, Howard. So be careful.
Well, that's okay. As long as you can't hit me, I don't mind. Okay, as long as we do it Zoom.
Yeah.
How's the pricing situation affecting projects in general? I'd assume that some builders are putting projects on hold because they're having issues with quotes that they can no longer deliver at. And what's your experience with that part of the industry?
Yeah, it's a bit all over the place. There's a few concerns for sure. We're seeing some projects that are redesigning to be built out of steel and concrete and things like that. So that's definitely a bit of a concern. I think the market is moving fast enough and well enough that it's going to bounce back quickly enough. And I think there's also a real interest in what wood products can do in the commercial sectors, that once we get through all of this, things will be back. There's a number of key projects that I know of that are still moving forward, even with the high prices that are happening. So it's not like we're seeing a mass exodus of projects over to steel, for example. We are seeing some of the early ones that are still in design phase that still have time to restructure and save some money and perhaps go to steel. But the ones that are already set in place, they're moving forward very quickly. And now now that we're at the other side of the pandemic, we're also seeing new projects that are coming back with more confidence for wood. So we're definitely moving through a lull in the system, as a lot of industries are.
Okay, and is the bulk of lumber used here, meaning Canada, is it sourced from Canada?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. We do import some as well, and we export a lot, but we have the second largest boreal forest in the world. And even talking to some of our manufacturers who manage their own forests as well as crown land forests, the amount of extraction they're doing is barely even touching what we have access to. Mm-hmm. So we have some amazing producers out there that are really on the top of their game for manufacturing, that are supplying some of the best products we have in the country. So we're definitely looking after our own.
Okay, and here's the last question. And this one is, I normally stay away from political questions, but I figure, listen, it's Andrew. I can give him a political question. What effect, if any, does our relationship with the U.S. have on our timber prices? And give me a different answer than the first.
It has a lot to do with it. Because the U.S. and Canada are trying to figure out their trade relations when it comes to wood products,
right? Especially,
obviously, the softwood lumber issues that are going on right now, and tariffs and price tariffs. But at the same time, for example, from an association standpoint, we're very close to our counterparts in the U.S. as well as the U.K. There's a lot of exchange of information. There's a lot of knowledge sharing. There's a lot of trust in what's happening out there. The political games that are happening are not at the manufacturing level. It's at the diplomatic level, right? And the politicians. So, I think there's a lot still to work through in various areas around this stuff. And I'm believe me, not an expert in this area whatsoever. But I do know that the collaboration between the technology experts is strong and very positive. So I think going forward, we're going to see some good right sizing of supply and pricing and things like that.
Okay, so what I'd like to say is Andrew for Prime Minister.
Andrew, I just know how to answer a question correctly.
You did a great job. Listen, it's fun for me. I told Adam it's like having a friend on and someone I really respect. And, one of my favorite words came out of the time we spent together, us, which is a wonderful greeting in the world of karate. So, Andrew, thanks so much. Say hi to your wife. Wish your kids all the best at university. And, maybe we can have you back in the future, when things change again. Okay?
That sounds great. Howard. Thanks for everything and all the best. And congratulations on everything that you're up to as well. It's fantastic.
Thanks so much, Andrew. Really appreciate it. Take care.
All right.
Bye.
See ya.
We'd like to thank Andrew Bowerbank and you for joining us today. And if you enjoyed our podcast, please like, comment, and subscribe on your favorite podcast networks or on our YouTube channel. And if you'd like to get in touch with us, you can do it two ways. One is by email, info@rewithhd.com, or on our website, rewithhd.com. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.